think about Wesley's position with white, what would you do? I mean, black's just moved a rook there. It doesn't look like that contributes too much to the position. So I would just think it's time to improve a white piece. Maybe bring one of the white rooks towards the center. White's rooks are connected, very flexible. They can both find some decent squares. No completely open lines for those rooks right now, but the center will open up at some point. So you might as well bring the white rooks towards the center in anticipation of that. And okay, Wesley taking a pause. Normally when the top players take things, it does mean they're calculating, it does mean they're looking for that direct action, but I still don't see anything white can do that's too scary for black yet. White doesn't really want to capture the black knight in the middle of the board because that would, I mean, trades here, that would actually help black. Black is slightly more cramped, black's pieces slightly less active than their counterparts, so trading pieces is not really on the agenda right now for Wesley at least. So he will not play knight takes knight in the center of the board yet. Also, if white captures the black knight, black's pawn would be able to take, and suddenly the structure would change. White's pawns might start to become weak. So Wesley, he'll try and keep the tension if he can.
And well, someone who's not keeping the tension at all, or maybe that is exactly what they're doing, Timur Ajabov and Jan Nepomniachtchi have played another draw. So this game is still, of course, this match is still in game one, and the player is fighting for third place. They have finished 2 games already, and both of them very quick draws.
No, I've just figured out why Magnus came up with his rook move and why Wesley is now taking the time out to think of a reply. And the reason is because I tested out, what is the theory, say, if black hadn't moved the rook and picked up the knight just to improve. And there, white is almost always responding with a knight move to the edge of the board, attacking the bishop. And all the other moves that black has that doesn't involve challenging in the center, it's all about chasing away that bishop. So therefore, if Wesley does do the most theoretical thing, yeah, exactly. And
here you cannot move the bishop because this pawn would drop. So Magnus defended it, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, it does feel like a very slow move though. And if white brings the knight to the edge of the board, which he has done, you predicted the future, Jovanka. White's knight eyeing up this bishop. At least Magnus now, he has the opportunity to just move that bishop away from the attack. He can retreat that bishop. You can also maybe find a more active square. Okay, he does retreat the bishop to safety. And now, wow, look at these. We say knights on the rim are dim, but look at these 2 knights, both of them finding the edge of the board. Yeah, knights on the side, we do not abide. But right now, both of those knights have gained time. This knight was attacking black's bishop earlier on, that bishop moving. Now the white knight attacking the other black bishop, and most likely we'll see that move. Actually, we can't see that bishop move right now. I was going to say, maybe Magnus wants to save this bishop, but if you try and save it, then suddenly, after white's pawn pushes forward, this knight is trapped in the center of the board. So Wesley, he has a cunning, hidden plan of actually just stepping this pawn forward in the current position, stepping this pawn forward, trapping black's knight. Magnus has to come up with something to save it now, and he tries to save it by pushing his pawn forward. So if white attacks the knight at least has somewhere to run back to. The knight would be protected on that square by a pawn. So both sides coming up with very interesting ideas. Wesley going for this unusual formation of the 2 white knights on the side of the board. Will he be rewarded, or will those knights be punished? Those knights could easily become targets or just be misplaced later in the game.
They look kind of funny, like 2 statues on the side, just looking over everything.
Yeah.
Ready to jump in.
well, ready to jump in. The one on the right is a little bit worrying, actually. But okay, it does have a purpose. It might try and trade itself off. But Magnus hasn't dealt with that knight attack on the bishop, as instead challenged the pawn in the center. So, are you surprised by that, David?
No, I think that's a very sensible move by Magnus. I think he had to do that pretty much to find a way back for the black knight, and that black pawn protecting the knight's escape square. And yeah, I heard you remark on that, Kaya. Magnus made a face, right?
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Slightly puzzling why he made that face, because I think he played a good move as black, or a necessary move at least. Maybe he just realised there was something he hadn't calculated in advance, and maybe that surprised him, but no, it looks like a decent move for black there. And Wesley just deciding, is now the moment to use white's knight on the right side of the board and maybe trade itself off for a bishop? Or do you push a pawn, attack black's knight, kick it away from the centre of the board? Lots of choice for Wesley, so...
I know what I would do.
What would you do?
I would. I forgot about attacking the knight. That escaped my radar. Instead, I was just focusing on supporting the pawn that's been attacked in the center. I want to reinforce it, and my favorite move in this type of position is just simply to push my pawn 2 squares up.
The F pawn.
The F pawn, and just keep the tension on the board. Because if there's one thing, especially when Magnus doesn't have so much time on the clock, I want to give him choice. I don't want to force the play. I don't want to go knight takes bishop, because then I'm giving Magnus a free move and knight takes knight. And it does seem to be fitting in with his plan. But instead, if I just reinforce the center,
so in one move, you want to push that pawn 2 squares.
2 squares, yeah. And I realise that I'm leaving that knight. I'm giving black an outpost. But, swings and roundabouts.
Yeah, that would make White's pawn center perfect. And, I mean, talking of perfect, look at Wesley's air quality. That is perfect air quality right now. CO2 levels, humidity, temperature, everything. Great for Wesley. He doesn't go for your move, Jovanka. Personally, actually, that pawn push, I don't think, if you gave me 5 candidate moves, I wouldn't still not consider. Well, maybe it's a good one, but it wouldn't be on my radar. That's how different we are as chess players. You want to push pawns, I would never dream of that personally, but maybe it would have been a good move. Instead, Wesley going for something more controversial, attacking Black's knight in the center of the board, or at least indirectly attacking Black's knight in the middle of the board. And suddenly there's a big threat in the position. Magnus frowning. And just while Magnus tries to deal with this threat, let's bring up the analysis board to show what Wesley is threatening to do, what he's trying to do. If Black gets carried away and just captures White's pawn in the center of the board, then suddenly, after knight takes knight, after Black recaptures, White threatening to capture the Black knight in the middle, and it's impossible to regain this piece because suddenly that Black pawn in the middle is pinned. White would actually win a piece here. It's still pretty complicated. There's still a lot of action happening. Maybe Black can even get away with this, but no, Magnus doesn't want to allow this and instead wants to counterattack. He allows that to happen in the center, now counterattacking against White's knight on the edge of the board. Suddenly it's complete chaos. This is not a quiet game. Everything is hanging. White has a choice. White can move this knight that's attacked. White can also capture this bishop. White can capture this pawn. So many candidate moves here.
Right. I mean, absolutely. It's a crazy game already, especially when there's so many captures on the board. And unfortunately, it does mean when you have so many possibilities that you actually have to be really methodical about it. You need to make that list and you need to just work through them. You order them, you rank them in order of preference and say for instance, you like knight takes bishop. Then you start with knight takes bishop. What happens if knight takes knight?
So many candidate moves here.
Right. I mean, absolutely. It's a crazy game already, especially when there's so many captures on the board. And unfortunately, it does mean when you have so many possibilities, impeccable yesterday at the calculation.
Impeccable indeed. Yeah, and that's what he's doing right now.
Just
Wesley's
work
calculating.
through them. You
He's
order
working
them.
out. He's making that list, like you said, Jovanka. He's saying, these are my 3 options, option A, B, and C. What happens if option A, you go 3 moves down the line, you evaluate that position, and then you say, okay, that looks good, but maybe it could be better. Then you look at option B, you go 3 moves down the line, then you compare option A and B, the conclusion there, and that's what he's doing. He's just weighing up the 3 options maybe in his mind.
Are you enjoying seeing yourself on the screen?
I was hoping that you wouldn't notice, Jovanka. My face had popped up on the screen.
I agree with Remus. I also want to relive the moment you guys had to dress up.
Where's the picture of the penguin?
No one remembers the penguin.
Oh yes.
The penguin.
I remember how much you just owned that costume, Jovanka. You were like, okay, I have to do this. I'm going to own it.
The bow tie especially topped off the costume there.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, White's knight that was attacked on the other side of the board, we did mention one of the top options for Wesley, so was just simply remove that knight from the fire of Black's pawn. So the knight re-centralizes itself off the edge of the board. I think very sensible from Wesley. So at least now for Black, however, okay, Wesley shaking his head, at least for Magnus, despite the fact his clock is ticking down, his knight in the middle of the board will never be trapped anymore. At the very least, at the very minimum, Magnus can just capture that white knight that has retreated. And Wesley's continuing to shake his head. Maybe he doesn't like the fact that his whole plan revolved around trapping the black knight in the middle of the board. Now that black knight can simply trade itself off for another knight. So White's last 3 or 4 moves maybe weren't as productive as they should have been. And Magnus, he's got tempting options. Personally, I would just hurry and I would just take off white's knight there. Get rid of black's problem piece in the middle of the board. That is actually a bit of a target. Trade off and then start to think. Because right now, look at the clock situation, 3 minutes. It's getting serious for Magnus Carlsen. This is still very tense. Lots of action beginning to happen, but it is the beginning of the action, so 3 minutes is not enough to deal with all of what's yet to come.
Yeah, I agree there, David. It's really shaping up quite nicely for a very sharp tactical battle. I think your move, knight takes knight, is a very human move because it seeks simplicity, and there is a bias in human nature that when things are just too complicated, too tense, we just can't handle it, and so therefore we seek clarification. And we see it. Magnus has chosen that move, and I'm expecting him to capture, I think, with the queen, is what I'm going to say. Okay, he throws in a little bit of a intermediate move. Pawn takes pawn, attacking the knight. We actually have a word for this in chess talk.
We have a couple of words for it, I think, yeah?
Yeah.
Zwischenzug.
Zwischenzug, yes.
And intermezzo.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I forgot about the Italian one.
So Zwischenzug is a German word. It just means between move, so like an in-between move. That's the literal translation. And intermezzo is pretty much means the same thing. It means that you don't play the obvious move, you don't automatically recapture something. You flick in a different move first, and next move, you fulfill your plan. And I think Magnus can run away with that black knight in white's half of the board because his other knight is attacked right now. And it's probably more important to save that other knight. So I would... Okay, we do see the Stockfish suggestions below the player's cameras. And the top move that Stockfish suggests...
That move?
That was not on my radar.
It was not on my radar, but now it's there. I'm like, oh yeah, wow. Of course. You threaten checkmate. Yeah. Who doesn't get a rise to their pulses when they...
when they see a move like that, exactly. Yeah. So Magnus, actually right now, he can bring the black queen down 2 squares. This is the recommended move. Ignoring the attack on both the black knights, both the black's knights under fire, but ignoring both of them and just bringing his queen down. And suddenly, using teamwork along this diagonal, the queen and bishop, they are threatening checkmate on this square. If the black queen can capture that pawn in the corner, the white king is trapped. So this would be a real star move by Magnus Carlsen, and it does give a big advantage, but it's not easy to find. This would force white to block the diagonal, and then black's queen could capture this pawn. Black actually having a great position now because white's king has been loosened up, the white king becoming a bit of a target. Black's queen, rook lined up on the same file. It's looking great for black in this type of position, but it's not easy for Magnus to find. Let's see what he comes up with. Personally, I think the most natural move is to take this pawn. The other move the computer suggests will not happen. Wow. Okay, I was going to say Magnus will not bring his bishop to this square, but he brings his bishop to this one instead. Magnus Carlsen coming up with a really creative move there, just allowing both of his knights to be captured. Suddenly, white has a choice. White can take this knight, white can take this knight. The whole idea behind black's last move is that after pawn takes knight, suddenly, if white does take a timeout to capture this black knight, then the white knight is a target. So much action now, so much chaos on the board. Magnus not finding an obvious move there, but finding something really creative that will set Wesley to think. Right now, Wesley has a huge decision to make. Which knight do you capture with white? Which one would you capture?
I would capture the one next to the queen. Don't think I would touch the one that is next to the black rook. I mean, because if I touch that knight, then suddenly the queen has been activated. And just bearing in mind there's the danger that we saw with the queen and the bishop aligning towards that checkmating square. Yep, they can see it. That's way too dangerous. And look at white's queen. It's like totally offside. And this is like a good... Yeah. Exactly. This is like a good sign that you should be attacking your opponent's king when their queen is just off on some adventure away with the fairies.
So we think that Wesley cannot play this move. Let's go back to the players. Magnus Carlsen with 1 minute on the clock. Wesley, probably he shouldn't go for that. I agree with you, Ivanka. He should capture the other black knight instead and at least slows down the entry of black's queen into the attack. But not an easy decision here for Wesley. There's so much choice. You can capture both the knights. You could also even, probably not right now, but you could consider capturing a bishop. So much choice for Wesley. So the more he thinks, the more time Magnus gets as well to try and work out the consequences and work out his reply in advance. So no matter what Wesley does now, he's been thinking for 2 minutes, Magnus will be ready with a reply. This last move by Magnus The evaluation bar didn't quite like it, but I think it's a fantastic idea. And it's at least posing practical problems to Wesley. Wesley now having to deal with some serious potential threats against the White King due to those diagonals that we highlighted. And Wesley, he's definitely slowed down. There's no easy solution. Which way would you capture that Black Knight next to the White Queen, Ivanka? With the Queen? With the Pawn?
The natural one is with the Queen.
No.
That is the natural kind of instinct. But I mean, I think there's also a case with pawn takes knight. Just the only reason I can think about pawn takes knight is just to stop the black attacking.
To keep the White Queen on the same diagonal as the Black King, maybe.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
so I think on that kind of basis, I think I would move pawn takes knight.
Yep, that would make sense, and that's going to be on Wesley's mind, which way to capture that knight. Once you've decided which knight to capture, if it is that one, still two choices, that makes it incredibly difficult. Suddenly
we see from 6 minutes, Wesley is down to under 4.5 minutes. So much choice and so many possibilities.
Ang nakikita kong problema dito, nagkakaroon ng napakalakas na atake si Magnus pagkatapos ng series ng exchanges dito. Kaya ang nangyayari dito is nahihirapan si Wesley mag-decide.
These stats, every player, every person is different, right, in their home office. And meanwhile, Wesley does capture that knight with his pawn, as expected.
And Magnus ticking down on his clock.
I can see, Kaya, you've seen a result in the other game.
That's correct. After 35 seconds, game 3 between Jan Nepomniachtchi and Timur Rajabov was finished with a draw. So they have now played 3 games, all draws. What do you guys expect from the 4th one? Well, I hear some news.
I know what I'm... Well, I don't bet, but I know what I would put my money on. Meanwhile, there has been a lot of action. Magnus Carlsen did bring his queen up to threaten checkmate, as we predicted in a different scenario. And that was blocked. White's bishop now blocking, and the Black Queen having to sidestep. White has captured one of Black's bishops. So suddenly, if we do a count, material is still level. Material on the board is still equal, but it's opposite colour bishops. Black has a very, very strong bishop in White's half of the board. White's bishop attacked, had to step back, attacking Black's queen. Do you like this transition? Who do you prefer in this position after all those trades, Jovanka?
Well, I prefer black pieces. I mean, the one thing I was thinking of is actually taking the bishop off the previous move. But I would not let that black-white bishop. Light squared bishop stay on the board. I would simply knight takes bishop. No questions asked. It's just too much of a thorn in my side. And then I have learned from the best when it comes to defending. It's like trade of queens.
Yeah, I don't think Black's actually threatening too much though. I agree. You have to get rid of Black's bishop right now. It's just too scary around the White King, in the vicinity of the White King. Too many loose light squares there. So after White does play knight takes bishop, I don't think Black's got any threats. So maybe White just has time to bring his rook from the left side into the game. I slightly prefer White in that position. I just think that the White bishop's super strong, and I think Black does have this rook on the left side of the board that won't activate itself for 2 or 3 more moves.
Okay.
So, I think the key move, knight takes bishop, but I don't think there's anything at all for White to worry about if that happens, or once that happens.
You got nerves of steel, because I was already visualizing a future where the Black Queen stays on that ideal square, and then suddenly a Black pawn has found itself mysteriously.
It takes a long time, even.
It does take a lot of time. But this is the thing about chess and ghosts and psychology. Often the players are scripting their own story, their own narrative as to what will be happening on the board. And what you saw there was David being ice cold and saying, actually, there's no threat. And my reaction, actually, of trading queens was simply a reaction to something.
Nakikita kong magandang move ni Wesley dito is C4. Threatening capture sa F3 bishop para ma-exchange ang queen.
It's finding a balance as well, because sometimes if you do see your opponent's threat, sometimes it does take you 2 or 3 moves to stop it, and that threat is only coming in 2 or 3 moves time, so you have to stop it immediately.
Yun nga lang, magkakaroon ng pawn majority ang black sa queen side.
Urgent it is to defend immediately against them. That's what Wesley So is weighing up in his mind right now. Does he need to capture that black bishop with his knight now, or can he delay it maybe a few moves to keep Magnus guessing? Personally, I would just take that bishop off as he has done. That bishop was just too well placed.
And I'm curious now how he will react. And well, he is a super grandmaster for a reason, and there he just calmly walks his queen one square forward. Would not have dreamt of that move at all. I mean, to me, it is like it removes the connection from the queen getting to the right.
It's highly surprising, right, that Wesley has pushed his queen up there. He's going after black's pawns on that left side, but Magnus, he's giving up his pawns. Look at the black rooks now and the black queen. They're all lined up together. It's looking like there's going to be some threats. You mentioned earlier, Ivanka, that black's threats might take 3 or 4 moves.
Now there's a big threat.
Whoa, what's happening with the bar?
Knight coming in. I mean, is there a threat to, knight
Which square?
to the center?
Okay,
Just to sacrifice itself.
Yeah, let's bring up the analysis board, because suddenly it does look like Wesley So's underestimated black's attack. Let's keep an eye on the players. He might react soon, Wesley So. If he gets greedy and takes his pawn, which must have been his intention, then black's knight would jump in to this square.
Ang threat is knight, knight h4, so force na kainin, and then pwedeng pumunta yung rook sa f5, then g5, pero may bishop na pwedeng bumalik sa g3, so yun ang kailangan isolve ni Magnus. Pero syempre, andyan pa rin yung h5, h4 na threat o kaya parang lagi nang nakadepensa na lang si Wesley. Wala pa lang h4, h5, h4 kasi may pawn sa h4 na white na kumain sa knight. So, yun ang dapat niyang isipin kung paano tatanggalin.
It's going to take too long now to get that into play.
So, hindi mo
Wesley just underestimating the danger.
Unbelievable scenes here, because this was my nightmare when I looked at the position a few moves ago. Okay, so we do have a move. He's advanced his pawn, so what's his response if black were to just to push one square further?
Yeah, we will see Magnus push his pawn one square further just to loosen up white's king shelter even more. There we go. Yeah, I mean, we've said in the past, it is kind of AlphaZero influenced by AI, this type of idea with black, but it's just good chess. It's just pushing a pawn, weakening your opponent's king, using the pawn as a battering ram. Now Wesley So takes a pawn, but that pawn looks irrelevant. White's queen is just not joining the action.
We got an explosive move, David. We have a tactic on the board. Magnus is willing to sacrifice a knight just to open up the white king position.
Not just
and it's going to be checkmate. We have to show this, mate.
Yeah, we will go back and show this. Actually, Magnus was ready to sacrifice his queen if something different had happened there. But okay, Wesley tried to trade off a set of rooks, but that's not going to help him. Magnus pushing a pawn, white's rook has to move, and then it's just going to be checkmate. Wesley So, he's either losing a rook or he's getting checkmated. He just resigns.
Wow, what a dramatic start to the final. Magnus Carlsen almost getting a checkmate here and winning the first game with the black pieces. And look at this.
So, mati po si Wesley. Mamatihin si Wesley. Kaya, yan, nag-resign na. Hindi nakita ni Wesley yung napakabilis ng H5, H4 na atake. And then yung H3 niya yung H3 niya sa tingin ko yung pa yung nagpasama, it doesn't help Sana hinayaan na lang niya. Yun nga lang, ang kinakatakot niya kasi hindi rin pala pwedeng hayaan. Ang kinakatakot niya is hindi rin naman pwedeng kainin dahil mag-open up yung position pag H4. Ang kasunod kasi is H3. So, ang galing ni Magnus. Ang ganda ng ginawa ni Magnus dito.
He really was incredibly ruthless. Wesley had no chance in the end.
All right, well, I am definitely very ready to hear David's analysis of what happened in this game. So here is the Lisoveta learning point.
Ivanka mentioned Wesley So's defeat was actually quite self-inflicted, and it was all caused by the fact that he misplaced his own queen. The white queen here not taking any part in the action. It's all going to be about the white king side, white's king. And look at the black queen meanwhile. the black queen is going to be a fantastic attacking piece. Earlier on, Wesley should have brought the white queen back towards that side of the board, maybe offering a trade of queens, but it's too late now. And Magnus highlighted the fact it's too late by bringing another attacker into the game. His knights, his rooks are perfectly placed. It's time to introduce a pawn. Magnus pushing forward with this pawn, as we saw a bit earlier, trying to throw it down the board. Wesley tried to block the advance of this pawn, pushing his own pawn one square, but when Magnus pushed forward, white taking a pawn with his queen, this was the killer blow. This finished off Wesley So. And Magnus just sacrificing his knight. The hidden point behind this is if Wesley So captures this knight with his pawn, Magnus was ready to sacrifice his queen, giving up his queen for a rook, and suddenly the two black rooks on their own trap the white king. The white king unable to find any shelter, no pieces around to defend it. This is a beautiful final checkmate. Wesley, he didn't allow this. Instead of taking with the pawn, he took with the bishop, but this allowed a more mundane way to checkmate. Magnus just took this pawn back after white tried to trade rooks. He stepped forward with his own pawn. The final position is losing for white because his rook is attacked, and if he moves the rook away, then suddenly queen takes pawn, the white king is under fire, and checkmate. Next move with two queens, double check and checkmate. Magnus finishing this one off in style.
Okay, so wait na lang natin yung next game. I think
A dramatic start to the final. Wesley So is now down by 1 point in the first match. He's going to have the black pieces in.
Hindi pa naman tapos, so may next game pa eh. So may pag-asa pa tayo, mga kababayan. 3 game pa actually. Pupuyat pa tayo dito kung tutusin. So yan lang po yung coverage ko for now. Yung laro ni Raja at ni Taymor is 1.5 na both, and then may final game pa sila. So parang nauna yata nag-start or draw lang ng draw ang ginawa. Sa final game na lang sila mag-usap. Parang ganun ang ginawa nila. Samantalang itong kay Carlsen at kay Wesley bakbakan talaga. So hintayin lang natin. Kayang-kaya naman bumalik yan ni Wesley kasi nangyari na yun before. Ilang beses na silang nag-finals ni Carlsen. Ilang beses na nangyari na naunahan siyang iskora ni Magnus, pero nakakabawi agad siya. Sa next game nakakabawi agad si Wesley. Minsan pa nga itim pa siya, nakakabawi siya. So thank you for watching the stream. So may stream na lang po ako ulit kung ready na po yung second game kasi medyo mahaba din yung break nila. Salamat sa